Hello everyone and welcome to the Zelda Cast here on ZeldaDungeon.net. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Allison Aletha. What's going on, Al? Happy long weekend.
Yes.
It's Labor Day for you guys,
Yeah.
right? It's not like a
Labor Day.
weird... Okay. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes we have holidays and you don't have the same... But, like, they're called different things.
Right.
Right.
So it's a very relaxing because you and we weren't able to make it to PAX this year. Otherwise, that's where we would be right now.
Yes. I am getting flooded with emails inviting me to things at PAX
Yeah.
right now,
Yeah.
today.
Still, yeah.
And I'm not there. I'm sorry. Next year.
I know. I'm sorry too. I tried to reply to some of them if they felt a little bit more like a personal reach out. Not like obviously not like super personal, but because I felt bad and like not professional. So it's like I don't know. The government worker in me was like, I don't like not replying to these emails.
You're better than I am. I seen those emails and I'm just like swipe, swipe, swipe. And so if you've emailed, if you're a developer or just anyone that's emailed me, I'm really sorry.
Email me instead.
I was bummed out. Yeah, I was bummed out that I couldn't go to PAX. And so like when you get to PAX emails, it's just kind of like let's just move on.
There was a lot of cool stuff that that people were inviting us to, and so I am bummed that I don't get to see that. But I'm making the best of it and having a nice chill weekend instead. So
I'm playing a lot of Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. I don't know about you.
I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3. I'm so happy.
Nice. As soon as I'm done Echoes, I'm gonna go and get that Sea of Stars that we were talking about before the show. It looks awesome. Very, very cool. Okay. We're finally ready. We're finally gonna do it. We promised a couple weeks ago, and then we pulled a bait and switch, and we got people to tune in for the Wind Waker episode, and I don't think anybody was mad about that actually. And then we had already booked Doom for the music episode, so we are here today to fulfill our oath, to fulfill our promise. It's time. It's time that we went full bore Spoilercast into Tears of the Kingdom. And I want to warn everybody off the top of this show, we are going to be talking extensive Tears of the Kingdom spoilers, and I think that this is a good moment to officially throw the spoiler warning out the window forever on this podcast. So, like, if you're listening to the Zelda Cast and you hear us talk about the end battle, what happens in Tears of the Kingdom at the end, anything like that, the game's been out for several months now. It's time. It's time that we talk about this game and get into the full everything. So spoiler, the gloves are off, okay? We are going to be delving into the depths of Tears of the Kingdom story from here on out. In today's episode, obviously, specifically, but just going forward. You're going to hear us talk about the end of the story, much like you would just hear us mention the ending of Breath of the Wild or Skyward Sword or anything like that. The time has come to put Tears of the Kingdom into that same category. Now, when DLC comes out, story DLC specifically, obviously there will be some sensitivity there, but for now, we're ready. Speaking of DLC, we'd already gotten a thing of DLC for Breath of the Wild at this point, hadn't we? It was only like 3-4 months out that the first batch was released. Am I remembering that wrong?
Yeah, the first batch came out in like June-ish, because that was like the master version or whatever, the hard version, and I think the Trial of the Sword, I want to say, it was the next wave that was like story specific DLC. So yeah, we already had the first wave by now. I'm okay with not having a first wave of DLC already at this point. I feel like I've been wanting a little bit of a break.
Me too.
But I will say that I've been seeing a lot of people like playing Tears again, not again, but like seeing it on my social media, people playing it, and it's making me want to jump back into it. So I'm glad I'm taking a little break and I'm getting myself geared up for when those DLCs hit, or DLC, whatever, if it's one or two waves.
I think it'll be 2. I mean, everything else was so... Breath of the Wild did it, so we got to do it for Tears of the Kingdom. That it makes sense to me that
and Age of Calamity too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm getting ready for that. I want to say it was about 9 or 10 months out from Breath of the Wild releasing to the Champions Ballad releasing as well. So we've still got a bit of time. I mean, I have to imagine that we were kind of talking about this before we went on air. I have to imagine that like the second batch of DLC for Tears of the Kingdom has to be the swan song for the Nintendo Switch. Like, unless there's a direct coming up in the next little bit that shows off this amazing lineup of games for 2024.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's time to start transitioning to the Switch 2. Rumors are flying around that developers have Switch 2 development kits, so like I think I think that we could begin the Switch life with Zelda, and we could end it with Zelda as well, which seems very apropos to me.
That would be super cool. But we also have to consider, we were talking about if we were going to talk about Super Mario Wonder, and we're not really going to touch too much on it. But they also opened, like the Switch opened with Odyssey, maybe it also end with Wonder too. So there's still that as well. Like I guess Wonder is a pretty big game that's coming at the end of this year.
I don't see any DLC coming out for that game though. I don't think so. And
did Odyssey have DLC? I don't remember.
I don't think so either. We'll see. I mean, so we've got Switch games up till the end of the year. We've got Mario RPG, we've got Wonder. Actually, I don't know what we have for December, but something I think.
Probably Zelda DLC. That was my guess, is that December was going to be Game Awards time. It was going to be very similar to what happened with Breath of the Wild and Champions Ballad. I was also guessing that Tears was going to win Game of the Year, but I no longer think that. So I guess
I think it's going to be Baldur's Gate 3.
I agree. I think Baldur's Gate 3 is going to take Game of the Year. So
I've seen a lot of good reviews. You know what? You know what we're going to get in December? Mark my words. If there's no game on the release schedule and Nintendo is thinking to themselves like, we got to put something out to fill the month. You know exactly what I'm about to say. They're going to do what they always do. They're going to break the glass. They're going to pull out that miserable pink puffball Kirby, and they're going to say, what gimmick can we slap Kirby on this month and produce a cheap game and just get it out there to people to buy it. That's what they're going to do.
I love it.
As God is my witness. Mark my words. Mark my words. So there you go.
Yeah. And we also have I think there's 2 waves of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC as well. Like one at the end here actually soon, and then another, I think, come the new year. So
right.
I guess we'll see. I do think this is like kind of our winding down, of the Switch.
I'm really excited to cover the Nintendo Direct, hoping and assuming that it happens in September, because I think that will give us a very big indication of like how far away the end of the Switch's life really is.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I would look forward to that Direct as well, because I feel like it'll be a little bit refreshing since we've just been talking about Tears so much.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay. Let's do it. Let's talk about this Tears of the Kingdom story. Now, I wanted to give everybody kind of a breakdown about how this is going to work, because a lot of the story in Tears of the Kingdom, there's like these micro stories, right? And we've covered a lot of those micro stories. So like we covered the regional phenomenon, we covered the Dragon Tears, and we're going to recap the Dragon Tears because it's very pertinent to the main story. But we're not going to go in depth with that. If you want to hear our full thoughts about the Dragon Tier side quest, you can go check that episode out. So we're going to cover the beginning, which kind of sets up the story, a little bit of the middle, and of course, obviously, we're going to delve into the end. And we're going to talk about some other things too, like this game's relation to Breath of the Wild, and a little bit more about the structure. Some stuff that we've touched on before, but I think that it's important to bring it back in to kind of help augment the points and maybe some of the issues that we have with Tears of the Kingdom story. And I also want to say too, if you're tuning in and you think that you're going to hear 2 Zelda fans gushing over the story, I think you're going to be in for a little bit of a disappointment. Now, I will say that there's a lot of things in the story that I really, really like, and I'm going to talk about the things that I really like. But there's things that I don't like, and things that I think could have been better, and things that I think could have been done differently. And we're going to be critiquing it. We're going to be giving some critical feedback here. And it doesn't mean that we hate the game. Doesn't mean any of that. It's just, I think that we can really appreciate this game while at the same time realizing that maybe it has certain flaws in certain areas. And I would suggest that maybe story is the biggest offender in that category. So we'll see how it goes.
Yep.
Anything you want to add to that before we kind of get going?
Kind of like you said, this is probably going to be about a bunch of things we've talked about and touched on other episodes, but this is us kind of bringing it all into one place, all into one more cohesive flow of thoughts, you know, instead of like super spread out like we have been. So I'm kind of excited about that, and I'm glad we took this long, because I think sitting with it for a couple months has helped maybe solidify our opinions and our thoughts about it.
Yeah.
And then I agree. Two things can be done at once. I can love Tears of the Kingdom and like think that it's probably high up there in my Zelda top favorite Zelda games, but I still have a lot of like critique about it because it's supposedly a direct sequel, and I think they did a lot of things not great. So
yeah,
just putting that out there.
Okay, well, buckle in. Let's go. So this is going to be like almost a recap, and then we're going to comment on some of the things that start here. So of course, we should start at the beginning. I think the opening for this game is awesome. Yes. God, the opening was awesome. The sense of mystery when you are going down to those Zonai caverns and you see the tapestry, you see the legend right on the wall. Ah, that was awesome. Like, that made me so excited and so pumped for this game. Mm-hmm. That's honestly one of my favorite moments, like one of the moments that sticks out to me the most. And like there were also some feelings of like, I can't believe I'm finally playing this game after so many years of talking about it. But that it was so good.
I was thinking the same thing, like 10 o'clock at night after you went to the 9 o'clock night release, and you come home and you plug it in and you're like, you get that opening and like the heartbeats, start right away. There's not even like an opening menu screen. It just is like dun dun, and you like start. It's so cool. And I had the exact same feeling. I was like, I can't believe we're finally here. Like, this is happening. And a lot of the theories that we've been having, or the community have been having, are playing out right before our eyes within those first like 2 minutes. You know what I mean? So yes, I agree. It was such an incredible intro to this game.
And we talked about this a little bit on our first impressions episode way back in May. But yeah, like the Zonai were immediately, right away, like a big part of the game. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like the fact too that, like, in previous iterations of the legend, you've seen or you've heard like the three goddesses descended from the sky, and like or Hylia descended from the sky. In this game, the Zonai descend from the sky, so it's like kind of a cool twist on like the legend that and a good way to kind of, to use a wrestling term, get over the Zonai as like these really cool, powerful beings, implying that they are literally responsible, not implying, actually saying they're responsible for like life on Hyrule and the kingdom of Hyrule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially like as Zelda is going through each mural and kind of explaining like, I've studied the Zonai in my studies, and like it's said that my ancestors are the combination of the Zonai and the people creating Hyrule. So I think that was really cool. Again, I want to say this is like almost the most like confirming piece of Tears of the Kingdom and its story in general. It was like very rewarding off the bat. Yes. To have sat here in 6 years, theorize a bunch of stuff about this game, and have like a lot of it confirmed within the first like 5 minutes of the game. You know what I mean?
And I think too, if you'll remember, I was kind of skeptical about the Zonai, because I was like, there was a couple throwaway lines in Breath of the Wild that, I think people are maybe overestimating the importance that Zonai is going to play, and like immediately they were just like, You're wrong again.
Guess what? Look, here's the Zonai.
The Zonai created this world, brother. Like you could not be more wrong. So, but I was happy to be wrong about that, because I think like it really did add a little bit more to the game. And in fact, one of my critiques about the story is like, I wish that you saw more of the Zonai. Like they really only, again, are kind of mentioned. Like, yes, you see Rauru, yes, you see Mineru, but you don't really see anything other than that. And I'm not saying that you would have had to have like seen like a town of Zonai, but if I can, people must be so sick of this, but like if I could reference Metroid here for a second, in Metroid you see like the Chozo everywhere. There's Chozo statues, there's civilization. They always feel like they're just out of grasp, like just out of reach, and I kind of was hoping for a little bit of that with the Zonai in this game, because like I thought that they were really cool. Like, yes, you see all these like Zonai structures and temples and stuff like that, which is cool, but I guess I just liked them where I wanted more of them, which is probably good, because I feel like you should always be wanting more rather than just be like, I'm sick of these guys, I don't want to see them again.
Yeah. So while I'm sitting here saying that this is like probably the most rewarding part of the game, where a lot of things is like confirmed, like yes, the Zonai are here. Here's like the confirmation that them or they and the people created Hyrule together and they descended from the heavens. But that's kind of like all you get. You see Rauru, you see Mineru. You have those like scripts that are up in the sky on the flower islands that are written by the scribe that used to follow
Yeah.
them around. You have that, but who, like, is everybody gonna do that bit to learn just a tiny bit more about Rauru and Sonia and Zelda in the past? Like, no, not everybody's gonna do that. So they're missing that bit of the information. And then on top of that, it's just like I kind of wish I could have seen Rauru and Mineru come down and meet Sonia and create
Yeah.
Hyrule. Instead, it's like already established that that happened. So that's kind of one of the things where when you're sacrificing story for your open world exploration or your building mechanic, you're missing some of these points that
Yeah.
people would have really appreciated to understand these characters better or understand the people, the Zonai better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I have two things to add to that. First, actually, it almost took me to like the very ending of my notes here, and I made a lot of notes. But I one of my notes is like I really love Raru in this game. Like his design is cool. I think they nailed his voice. Like he sounded great.
Yes.
He was like a likable character. Like I was
Mhm.
like I would have loved to have seen more Raru, like a traditional companion with Raru, because I thought he was great. And they didn't quite do that. So again, I was left a little bit wanting, but not necessarily like the worst way. Because I was like, I guess it's better to be wanting rather than oversaturated. And I'm not convinced that there's not going to be like another Age of Calamity or something like Age of Upheaval
Sure.
or something with Raru as like a playable character. I think that could
Yeah.
be like on the books still.
Yeah, that's cool. And I can understand why your time with Rauru is so limited. It's like it's a mirror of the plateau on in
Yeah,
Breath of the Wild with the old man. So Rauru kind of is the mirror of a king of Hyrule helping you through your tutorial island.
right.
So like I get the concept, but at the same time, that's another thing that Tears did where it was like the same as Breath of the Wild that maybe we didn't need it to be the same. You know what I mean?
That leads me to my second point that I was about to make, which to what you said, I think that there is a running theme or a running arc in this game where it's like they really did sacrifice story for being able to do whatever you wanted to do, and there's very specific points that I want to talk about when we get there. But like, if I sound like I'm repeating myself, I think it's because it runs throughout the entire game, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get there first. So them going down to the chamber is awesome, is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
However, and actually the whole sequence in the chamber, basically up until the end of the Great Sky, I think is incredible. But I do have a few nitpicks that I want to go through here. So first of all, maybe you can answer this for me, Al, because you're much smarter than I am. What, like, so Ganondorf has been sealed down there for like thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly causes him to wake up the moment that he does? And this is the first instance where I think like a little bit of continuity with Breath of the Wild might have helped, because in my head it's just like, okay, Calamity Ganon, whatever that was defeated. Maybe that triggered something in Ganondorf where all this gloom came out and started going everywhere, or like something like that. So it feels very happenstance that they go and find Ganondorf down there,
Mm-hmm.
where I think I would have rather them just be like Calamity Ganon was an agent of the Demon King, or like an extension of him, or he was like the one ring of to Ganondorf's Sauron or something like that. And since he was defeated, that's triggered something in Ganondorf that like we have to go and investigate because maybe the seal is weakening. I think that's what I would have liked to have seen versus
Mm-hmm.
them just kind of going down there and Ganondorf's just like, oh, I should get up, like, because that's kind of what it feels like a little bit. Like it's very
Yeah.
cool. Like don't get me wrong, it's cool, but it's
Yes.
kind of just like, okay, well that's bad timing, that's bad luck.
Mm-hmm. So this is tough because there is a timeline of events, but you have to put it together yourself. And maybe this is where I'm going to start. I'm like finally going to start giving you leeway on the calamity stuff and the malice and whatnot. Not 100%, but just like the fact that Nintendo does continue to not spell things out is a bit frustrating. So you do have the events that are in the murals that Zelda finds down there where it's with the Demon King. That's what Rome tells you, is that they fought the Demon King, right?
Yeah.
And that his fall to malice is what created the calamity that happened 10,000 years ago. So this is before the 10,000 years ago events, okay? And then it was prophesied to happen again 100 years before Breath of the Wild. It happened again. We saved everybody from the calamity. Great. So now there's this gloom that's coming up, which is the seal breaking on Ganondorf. And the only thing that I can think of is like they go to investigate the gloom. And the reason that Raru's like magic with the secret stone holding, sealing Ganondorf breaks is because it was meant to in that moment, because that's how Zelda set it up in the past. She's like, I know it's happening, right? Obviously, the Zelda that's down there that we know already doesn't know what's happening, but the Zelda in the past does. And she's like, I know this is happening, so here's all my setup to prevent, another calamity. That's the only thing I could think of that happens, because it's not really explained why.
I love that you set me up for the next thing I was about to say, and I did mention this on the Dragon Tier episode, but I think it's worth repeating. I'm a little disappointed that I'm a little disappointed in the lack of explanation for Zelda falling into that black hole and just being warped into the past, especially because I think that there was such an amazing ready-made explanation for it, which you just laid out. So Zelda, as the game unfolds, Zelda, Ganondorf wakes up, stuff starts breaking, the upheaval happens, and Zelda falls into the void, and Link's arm gets ripped off. And Zelda just, well, it does get ripped off. It's gone.
And Link's arm gets ripped off.
Yeah. Now Zelda, instead of dying, she warps backwards into time. This is fine. This is fine setup, because it's a mystery. Like, where is Zelda? And I like that mystery. However, there is no explanation for why or what caused Zelda to go backwards into time. And now some people might be just like, well, what's the big deal? Like, she just went back into time. She had a secret stone at this point, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I can't. Where did she find that secret stone? I can't remember.
So it's attached to Raru's disassembled hand that's sealing Ganondorf.
Okay.
So when the hand falls, the secret stone falls out, and Zelda picks it up, and she's holding it as she falls.
So I mean, I could accept that explanation where the spirit of Raru wants to protect Zelda, knowing how important she is, and it transports her backwards into time. I can accept that.
Well, that's not his power. It's her power. She's got time travel, not him. So it was her power being activated by the secret stone.
Yes, I'm sorry. So she gets the secret stone from Raru, and some kind of flight or fight trigger goes, and she goes backwards in time. That's
the best explanation we have.
And that's serviceable. However, what really would have been awesome, which is frustrating because you see parts of it, is if Zelda had this wicked plan. And, she knows that she is going to draconify herself and turn into a dragon. But how does she trigger the events that actually lead to Ganondorf's demise? There's two things that she needs to do. First of all, she needs to break the seal on Ganondorf, as you've said, and she is responsible for that. And then second of all, she needs to send herself back into time, in a classic example of the magnificent Zelda bootstrap paradox, to begin this whole sequence of events which will lead her future self back to that exact moment where Ganondorf is revived. I think that would have been such an awesome and easy explanation if it would have been okay, Zelda set this all up, she planned it. It's not just happenstance that the secret stone sends her back into time. This is Zelda's will, that she wants this to happen and send her back. This is Zelda's will, that she wants Ganondorf to wake up, and yes, it's going to suck for a little bit, but it's the only way to finally get rid of this guy. I think that would have been awesome. And what we get, it's fine. It's serviceable. But man, that would have been really cool.
I mean, there's still, I feel like there's elements there of what you're wanting, because this was something that it took me I think this is something that took me a minute to realize, because at first I was like, where the heck did the Sky Islands come from? Where did these shrines come from? Well, they're there because Zelda went back in time. So the second she goes back in time is the second that in the future she set up all these trials for Link, putting the Temple of Time up in the sky, having these shrines set up, so that he is prepared to find her, find the Master Sword, beat Ganondorf. So that's it's clear that that was her plan, and that's why those things all of a sudden show up.
Right.
But for easily the first 100 hours of the game, I'm like, why did all this stuff all of a sudden show up? And everybody's like, oh, cool, stuff is in the sky. Like, there was no explanation for that, but you can guess after you've seen the story that it's because Zelda set it up. You know what I mean? It's just like one of those things that's frustrating where it's like, obviously that's what's going on, but there's no explanation for why that's going on.
Yeah. So I would say, like, I think you can infer that, but I think for me, I would have liked to just see them kind of confirm that, or like kind of come outright and say that, because I think that makes Zelda look really smart if they do that. And now,
really is,
she is, like, but now it's just kind of like, I think this is what Zelda meant to do, but like I'm not exactly sure. So you just kind of infer it, where if it were me, I would have kind of maybe just said, like, had a quick cutscene where Zelda's like, hey, I need to eat the stone. I need to set up this magic to take me back into time. I need to make sure that Ganondorf awakens. And actually, I'm going to save the last thing that I think that she should do, because I know that you hate this part. But let's talk about the upheaval really quickly. Uh-huh. I do like that, actually, and one thing that I also think bears repeating, is worth bearing repeating, is how did the royal line continue after?
Oh yeah, you brought that up, and it's just like, I understood what you were asking. I didn't at first, but I understood what you were asking, and it's like, yeah, you kind of question, like, how did that happen?
Yeah. Like, I think, would it have hurt to see like a little Raru baby running around or something like that you could maybe be like, okay, like, he must have had a baby or two, and like that's how we get here.
I'm gonna connect this to Star Wars really quick. Where Ahsoka's coming out, so there's like connections to Rebels, and I'm sorry if nobody knows what I'm talking about, but there's a kid involved, and in Rebels you wonder, like, how the heck did this kid even come about? Like, when did this happen? Because one of the parents dies, so it's like, when was there time for this kid to happen? So it's kind of the same thing, where it's just like, when was there time for Rauru and Sonia to continue their line? They're dead, you know?
Right.
We didn't see any of their children running around. So yeah, I kind of get where you're coming from with that, but I'm assuming there's children in the background.
I can't wait for the Netflix show that comes out in like 15 years that shows us little Sonia and Rauru running around. So anyways, that's something that I've always wondered. But the upheaval, easy for me to say. The upheaval I thought was very cool, because it's like, it's this big event that happens, and I think it should be a big event, because like, you've got all this, like, I mean, you've got the castle rising in the sky. You've got the Sky Islands. To me, I wasn't concerned about that, because I think that was directly connected to the upheaval, right? Like,
yeah, but. So when it happened, you didn't ask, like, why all of a sudden is this stuff showing up in the sky? Why are all these sky islands everywhere, and the island, and then pieces are falling down? Like, why is that happening all of a sudden?
Well, I think that people just say, like, it's because of the upheaval. Like, it's, but the question, maybe what you're asking, or maybe what I'm not getting, is like, what caused the upheaval, right?
I mean, we know, because we saw it. Right? The people don't know. I guess my thing is just like, was that stuff always in the sky and it just invisible to everybody in Breath of the Wild? And then so when the upheaval happens, all of a sudden it's just really visible. Obviously later I figured out it was because Zelda went back in time, and like, you know, it caused all of a sudden for these things to appear because Zelda went back in time. So
I do think that the Great Sky Island was up there, right?
We don't see it in Breath of the Wild. Where is it?
Well, yes, but I believe they do mention that the Great Sky Island's been up there for like quite a while. Is that correct? Yeah, okay.
Zelda, before she goes all dragon mode, she tells them and Mineru to send the stuff up into the sky, so that it's a trial to prepare Link and whatnot. So, but that would mean it's up there already in Breath of the Wild. So where is it? Why can't we see it? I guess that's my issue, is like, you still have Breath of the Wild in the mix. If this was its own game, fine, you know, but you still have Breath of the Wild in the mix where you're not seeing any of this crap.
I've got something for you, but I will say, I think I could buy the explanation. If Nintendo tried to sell me this explanation, I think I could buy it. I could swallow it, where they're just like, listen, the stuff is way up in the sky, and it was covered by clouds. You just couldn't see it in Breath of the Wild. or like even if they were just like, there's some magic covering it that's making it invisible, and that's why you can't see the Death Stars, and that's why you can't see the Great Sky Island. I could be like, I'm getting taken for a ride, but you know what? Okay, fine.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, and I have a big long point that I want to make here, so bear with me. So I think one of the things that you know what, it didn't bother me as much as I think it bothered you, which is funny because I feel like I'm more of a stickler for these things. But the lack of continuity to Breath of the Wild is like outrageous at times.
It's so bad.
Like, where's all the Guardians? Where's all the shrines? Where are the Sheikah? I mean, the Sheikah Towers are still there, but like, where is
they're
all?
Different. They're not the same Sheikah Towers.
No, they're not. So like, where is all of this Sheikah technology? Why does nobody recognize Link? What happened to the champions? Why are they not like a unit anymore? Like why does it seem like the events of Breath of the Wild are like this weird thing that happened like in like a parallel dimension? Yeah. And if I was Nintendo, once again, I would have went the way where it's just like, you know what? That did happen in a parallel dimension. Or not a parallel dimension, but like a different future. You're familiar with X-Men Days of Future Past, right?
Yeah.
Now, I could have bought, and again, this goes back to Zelda going back into the past and having this wicked plan, knowing that the Breath of the Wild timeline as it is, there is no chance of defeating the Demon King. The Master Sword is pooched, Link's arm has been ripped right off, and Zelda fell basically to her death. That's the timeline in Breath of the Wild's timeline, and Zelda is just like, well, that's no good. I've been to that timeline because it's my future, much like Days of Future Past. So if they would have went into the past, if Zelda would have had some fail safes to take her back into the past using this bootstrap paradox, which I love, she would have been like, all right, listen, this is what we're gonna do. We're going to charge up the Master Sword for like a million years on my dragon head so that it has all this light energy. We are going to never build the Divine Beasts because it's not going to be worth it because eventually they're going to get taken over. Guardians, we're not doing it. All of this different stuff that we know would come to pass in Breath of the Wild and to an extent Age of Calamity. I think that like, if I were Nintendo, I would have made Zelda, again, the smartest person in the world, to be like, we're taking it down a different direction, and we are going to avoid all that. And so, by doing that, you create almost like an alternate timeline, in a sense. Mm-hmm. And I know that that's like a buzzword with Zelda fans, and I don't like timelines any more than than someone else. But like, I think that you can do that in a very easy and digestible way. I'm not suggesting that you have to do anything else with this timeline after, but like, if you had Zelda go back into the past and that, you know, she knew that the Breath of the Wild timeline ended in disaster and made some alterations to make a better future, what's wrong with that story? What's wrong with that explanation? It solves almost every single big major issue with continuity and problems and stuff like that with Breath of the Wild, because like the way that it is now, it just feels weird. Like, it just kind of feels weird. It's like, Bolson, why don't you remember me? Like,
right. We built a whole house together.
Yeah, it's you were outside my house for like the entire game, my brother. Like, what are you doing? What do you mean?
Yeah, and like, I 100% get what you're saying, and like, I feel like that's what the answer would be, if not for the tiny bits of continuity that there is, where they're like, yes, the calamity still happened, you know, and 100 years ago we were screwed, but now we're fine. They still have the mural of like the tapestry of the story. There's still these tiny little things that say Breath of the Wild happened, or the events in Breath of the Wild happened, so that tragedy still happened. But then there's like, but it's almost like they want to forget it so bad that it's like wiped from everybody's memory still, and it's so weird. And I've seen theories where, when it comes to the Sheikah technology, that it was all deconstructed because they don't want it corrupted again, which makes sense.
You know what? I could buy that too. Like, but tell us that.
If they said it, you know? Or that they deconstructed it, recycled it, and created the towers. Well, you have 1-for-1 towers, so where's all the shrine pieces? Where's all the... There's a crap ton of underground Sheikah stuff. Where'd all that go? Is it just buried at this point? Like...
Okay, I have something else to add here too. So you know how for a while I was just like, we've kind of touched upon the story of Age of Calamity, been like, in a nutshell, this is a really cool story, but like it's not what happens in Breath of the Wild. Like this isn't that. They could have made this whole trilogy so awesome, and I would have immediately and without any shame been like, I apologize, Age of Calamity. This is a masterful story. What they could have done, and perhaps they should have done, is they create Zelda goes back in time in Tears of the Kingdom, creates this semi-alternate timeline, right? And maybe that leads to the events of Age of Calamity, where like, and this is a little bit of a stretch because you still have all the Sheikah technology and everything like that. But let's just go with this, where it creates a somewhat alternate timeline where like you still fight Calamity Ganon, but maybe he doesn't have the Guardians, maybe he doesn't have the Divine Beast and stuff like that. You still fight him, but you can defeat him, and you still do interact with some of those characters. Like you interact with Yunobo, you interact with Sidon and stuff like that. The characters that make sense. And Age of Calamity could have perhaps shown that and then still given you a happy ending as well. And then which is kind of a risky play, because then at the time you're just like, this is bogus. This isn't what happened before Breath of the Wild. But like retroactively, after you finish Tears of the Kingdom, you're like, wow, this Age of Calamity was in fact like the prequel to Tears of the Kingdom, not Breath of the Wild. So that would have been like kind of cool, like if they went that way, and that would have maybe covered up some of the lack of continuity from Breath of the Wild and fixed Age of Calamity. And I don't know. I'm trying to make chicken salad out of what here, but
even so, at that point, Zelda and Link would actually be their age. They'd be over 100 years old, so
yeah, okay, you're right.
So
maybe they got that juice from Pura to keep their good looks. I don't know.
Oh yeah, their little magic turn back time thing. It's just really, it's such a weird choice for Nintendo not to. Here's the thing. I think that we've had direct sequels in the past with the Zelda series, but it's worked because it's usually almost always in an alternate world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I keep saying that because I feel like I'm talking in circles and like not making sense. So I keep saying, you know what I mean? So apologies for that. Anyways, so it made sense because it was in an alternate world. This is the same exact world. It's marketed as, again, maybe the marketing team just needs to be like rehashed, because they did this with Age of Calamity, marketing it incorrectly. And then I think they did it with Tears a little bit too, saying this is a direct sequel, but it's not enough of a direct sequel. They're not connecting it to things that happened in Breath of the Wild enough for it to feel, because they want it to be a standalone item, like Majora's Mask was, like Phantom Hourglass was, which I understand and I get, and I'm all for that, but put us in a different universe. Do what you said about having an alternate kind of timeline. Maybe the Calamity didn't happen. I don't know. But it's just such an odd choice what they did, where they're like, this is like 5 or 6 years past Breath of the Wild, but nobody remembers you. All the Sheikah stuff magically disappeared. I don't know. Like the stuff in the sky all of a sudden. It's really weird. It's such a weird decision that was made.
And I think it would have been kind of cool to go back and you're like, why did, like, instead of like, why it feels like nobody remembers me, but like some people do, it's like, why does it feel like Link never existed in this world yet? Like, just, and maybe like Drip Nobo, that's just him in this alternate timeline where he's just like kind of a goon, and like maybe I mean maybe Tiba is not really there, and that's why you have Tulin instead. And like, I don't know, you could have done something else, I guess, with the other two. But and another continuity thing that's weird too is it aside from the Mifa court, it feels like the champions just like never existed in this world either, which I thought was strange.
Yes.
So I don't know. I think that is weird. I think that there could have been a cool explanation to get around that. Obviously, they did not go that way. And are we overthinking it? Maybe, probably. Like I think to the average fan, they're just like, whatever. I don't care. Like I just want to play the Zelda game. But like I feel like more and more and more, like story is becoming like a really big deal in the Zelda series, especially like, I think like with the rise of the Zelda YouTuber and like that kind of stuff like 10 years ago, like I think like people really get into the series for its story as much as anything else. So like when you kind of have this like cavalier approach to the story, it's just kind of it's a little bit disappointing. But let's move on from
you didn't do your research,
a little,
you set up the story,
which is weird because it's like you made the first game, dude. Like this is your game.
Yeah.
Let's move on because we have a lot of other stuff to cover here.
God.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about fake Zelda. I love the idea of fake Zelda. I think that this is really cool. I do think that the execution was a little bit lacking sometimes. I would have liked to have seen more. I would have liked to have seen like, even though like, because like we obviously knew immediately like this is not the real Zelda, right? Like,
Yeah.
I would have maybe liked to have seen that play out a little bit more, like play out like, is that Zelda, and like it's a mystery. And unfortunately, this is where the problem with the game's structure comes into play, because the way that fake Zelda is structured is that instead of like slowly unraveling the mystery throughout the game until you get to Hyrule Castle, because Nintendo is so steadfast in like, you know what, you could play this game however you want, you could do it in any order you want, you could just go straight to Hyrule Castle if you want. Because of that, you lose that mystery of fake Zelda, and in fact, you have to see this played out 4 separate times where you're just like, Zelda told me to do something that was actually detrimental. That's weird. I wonder if that's actually Zelda. And which is fine once, but then like again, you're just like, okay, I've seen this. By the 4th time, you're just like, okay, yeah, she's not real. She's a puppet of Ganondorf. Like, we get it. Like, and instead of like, you know, you do the first temple and maybe she does something a little bit weird. You do the second temple, it's like, there's something not right here. You do the third temple, and you're like, what? And you know what? Instead of slowly revealing that, you have the same cutscene 4 separate times, and it's just like, I get it. She's not Zelda. She's evil. Like, yes, because of that dedication to doing the game in any order that you want, I feel like this storyline of any in the game feels the most like is the biggest casualty of that. Like it feels like this could have been really cool, but it wasn't.
I feel like it could have been really cool too, but it's so choppy just for the same reasons you said, but also because of the dragon tears, because you're watching all this stuff play out about the past, so you know she's in the past. So it would have been maybe nicer to maybe not start the dragon tears until after you finished all the dungeons and stuff, where you have this storyline of like what happened to, like, maybe Zelda is around here doing crazy stuff, you know what I mean? So instead of, you know, she went back in time because of the dragon tears stuff, or even actually that wouldn't work, because even on the Great Sky Island, it's clear that something's going on with Zelda and she's not there. You know, there's very clear cutscenes saying she's not there. So when you go down to the surface and everybody's like, we've been seeing Zelda everywhere, and it's like, no, you haven't. She's not here. It's not real. So yeah, that, I feel like the decision to have that was not the greatest decision, because it's automatically ruined by the fact that she's in the past. So
yes, here's what I might have done instead to counteract that. And I think I threw this theory out on a show that we did earlier, but I'm going to throw it out again. I think that you could have offset that, because the question in the game is like, is this the real Zelda? And that's the wrong question to ask, because we know it's not the real Zelda. We know that immediately. No matter, as you say correctly, if you start at the first dungeon where you're just kind of like, Zelda's acting a little bit sus here, you know right away from the Dragon Tears, which also should have been, you know, in sequential order, no matter where you got them. But we know that that's not the real Zelda. So is that the real Zelda is the wrong question. The right question might have been, who is this? Who is masquerading as Princess Zelda? And I think you could have built up that mystery, and I think it would have been cool if you would have involved a heel turn somewhere. Maybe fake Zelda could have actually been Sonia, and she's been in on it the whole time, and maybe her death was faked so that she could give the secret stone to Ganondorf, and maybe she wasn't who she appeared to be. Maybe it was Mineru. Maybe Mineru was like, you know what, my brother is hogging all the glory. He's whatever, like, I'm going to help Ganondorf and trick people into Zelda. Maybe it's a character that they just made up, and like,
it's Aster.
Oh God, not anything but that. Oh.
See, I would have loved if they brought the witches back for like the Twin Rova kind of situation.
I was just about to say that actually before you threw out Aster. That, oh God.
I think that would have been, because they would have enough illusionary like magic to get away with that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they already served Ganondorf in past games, so why not? You know, of course you'd be like, where did they even come from? But you know what I'm saying? It's just, that would have been such a cool opportunity to oh my god, I would have lost my mind if that was like ever confirmed. Because that was my
Right?
theory up until it was Phantom Ganon, you know?
And see, that's the thing too, is like if you went with like a callback like Twin Rova, it instead of like building up a mystery and building a new character, you could kind of play a little bit faster and looser, because like the mystery might not make as much sense if it's Twin Rova versus if it was like a character already established in the game. But the payoff to just seeing Twin Rova in like Tears of the Kingdom would have just been like, oh yeah, you were losing your mind, and and I want to actually be very clear. I think that the scene when Zelda turns into Phantom Ganon is amazing. That's one of my favorite battles in the game. It's one of my favorite scenes in the game. It's one of my favorite sequences. Like when all the champions show up, like, God, it's awesome. It's so good.
It is awesome, but, and I've said this when we talked about this in a past episode, again, it's kind of diminished by the fact that you can fight him in the overworld beforehand. I would have loved it if it came like after your fight with Phantom Ganon, and you still clearly have stuff to do in the overworld where you either explore, you unlock all your areas, you get all your dragon tears, you go to the spirit temple.
Yeah.
You know, there's still stuff to do, so there's still time to introduce the Gloomhands and Phantom Ganon after the reveal of Phantom Ganon. Because, like, I feel like the very first time I saw Phantom Ganon, I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. But then to have him be the reveal of fake Zelda, I felt was very ruined by the fact that I've already seen him and already fought him, you know?
Yeah, and it was probably just my mind working, but I was trying to piece together. I was like, is fake Zelda somebody? Is like somebody, like, that was a question I was asking myself. And so when it was just kind of Phantom Ganon, I thought it was awesome, like the moment of the cutscene. But I was also a little bit disappointed because I was like, oh, that's too bad. I thought it might have been Sonya. I thought it might have been Mineru. I thought it might have been somebody, right? Like, and it was just kind of Phantom Ganon, and it was like, okay, like that's fine. It's serviceable, okay, but it could have been really, really cool if they'd done it that way. But that, like, the lack of structure to the story is, it really hurts. I feel like this fake Zelda story, because you're just like, it's like, come on, like, I know that that's not the real Zelda, and like I'm 80 hours into this game. I'm on my 4th dungeon. Like, why is everyone acting befuddled that Zelda is doing un-Zelda-like things? Like, come on.
So. I wouldn't say it's that fake Zelda is the only thing that's kind of like messed with because of the lack of, and we've talked about this in the past. It's honestly the entire story is messed with because you can do it in any order that you want. And so I feel like there's consequences for having that kind of freedom, and I like structure to my video games, and so it's something that I miss, and I hope we go back.
I agree, and that's a great segue into the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is the 5th time that you hear the story about the imprisoning war, and of course that comes from Mineru.
Yeah,
and I just said that I said that fake Zelda was the biggest casualty of the structure of the story. I think I am going to walk that back. I think that Mineru and her story is the biggest casualty of that. Because, first and foremost, let's give credit where credit is due. I love the Spirit Temple part of the game. I love the Construct Factory. I like the character Mineru. I thought that she did a great job in the game, like the voice actress. I thought that the character was great. Like, I like Mineru in this game. However, the thing about that is like Mineru feels very. Let me tell you my experience with it. And I got to Dragon Head Island. I think it was like in between. I'd done 2 dungeons and I had 2 left to go. And I got there and I was like, oh, this feels weird. I guess I'm not supposed to be here yet, but I'm gonna do it anyways. And then I got to the Spirit Temple, or the Construct Factory, and I was like, I'm going to wait to do this. And I finished my 4th dungeon, and I went to the Construct Factory, and I completed it, got Mineru, got to see more of the imprisoning war, and more of her and Zelda. But then you go to Kakariko Village, and you talk to... Actually, no, I'm sorry, not Kakariko. You go to Lookout Landing, you talk to Pyrrha, and she tells you about the quest for the 5th Sage. And it comes up, and it's like, completed. And it's like... Yeah. You hear about the rings in Kakariko Village, and it comes up, completed. And it's like, that kind of sucks, because like I feel like that entire quest, even though I already did it, I feel like it was like taken away from me because I didn't get to experience it in the right way.
Right.
Like I spent like no time in Kakariko Village because like I already had Mineru. What do I need to go there for?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that really, really kind of sucked. And if I can jump ahead a lot to the end, actually, one thing about Mineru is that the game like gives her this kind of big send off, like where at the end of the game she's just like, oh, like, you know, my mission is finally complete. I can finally rest. Like I'm going to disappear. They give her like the feast farewell spot, basically.
Oh, I was thinking Impa from Skyward Sword.
Or yeah, okay. Actually, that's probably better. Impa from Skyward Sword. And for me, it didn't land for as hard as it should, because it's like, well, I skipped over basically all the quests to get to you. You've been in my party not that long, and like you're like, I feel like that kind of works for like a really important character or like a companion that's been traveling with you for the duration of the game. Like think Midna at the end of Twilight Princess. This one just felt a little bit I don't know, lackluster to me. And like I said, I really liked the character of Mineru. Like I thought that she was great. But yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like that didn't pay off really as well as Nintendo maybe hoped that it would, and I feel like that lack of structure again to get to know the build up to this fifth stage. Maybe you learn a little bit about the fifth stage. Maybe you're just like, oh wow, there were more Zonai than Raru. Like I don't know. I feel like that took away.
Yeah, I would say what really truly took away from it is like my connection was Impa Skyward Sword. You see young Impa take Zelda exactly where she needs to go.
Right.
Follows her throughout her whole journey. You know she's been there the whole time. You know she's looking after Zelda. Come to find out that it's also Impa in the future, old lady Impa. And then like that parting between the two of them really hits you hard. Even with Groose, because Groose became connected to older Impa too. So there's all that connection with the characters. Well, in Tears, you see like 2 cutscenes between Zelda and Mineru, like total. You know,
right.
The most of it is with Zelda and Sonia, Zelda and Raru, and then but like at the end of Tears, it looks like Zelda and Mineru went through this big like ordeal together, like Zelda and Impa, but you didn't see that. So the connection, the feelings are not quite there because you didn't see what made them feel disconnected in the same way Impa and Zelda did. So it wasn't just me not connecting with Mineru completely. It was also just seeing Zelda be so like upset that Mineru was leaving. But like, how do we know they actually had a good relationship beyond like something professional and trying to save the world? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, like, to be fair, you do see a couple Dragon Tier scenes where the two of them are working together, but you're right. But like, it's not like they, I don't know. It's not like they seem particularly close, or not like they seemed. I don't know, but it felt like Mineru got shortchanged a little bit. Her quest, her farewell. And it was too bad, because I think that she like really was, much like Raru, a very cool character that I would have liked to see more about. And I think, like I said, I think they're saving that for like Age of Upheaval or something like that. Like, I don't know, but it was too bad. But I guess that's one of the flaws. If you're gonna have your game where you can just do anything and everything that you want whenever you want, so. All right, anything else you want to add to that, or should we move on and talk about the big guy and then the ending?
Let's do the big guy and the ending. I'm ready for that.
I thought Ganondorf was really cool in this game. It was great to get to see him in the past doing stuff, and kind of his origin story almost, and his turn into the Demon King. I would have liked to see Ganondorf be a more active participant in the actual events unfolding in real time in Tears of the Kingdom. And this is another example of the structure of this game hurting it, because you can go straight to Ganondorf if you choose. However, I think what I didn't love about Ganondorf, aside from his theme, which people have been all up in my business about.
I love it.
Yeah, go to hell, Corey. But so Ganondorf is just kind of sitting there in the depths. He's hanging out, and it's like, what you doing? Like, shouldn't you be trying to take over the castle or something like that? Like, shouldn't you be doing something other than just like waiting for me to come and fight you? And he's still in his corpse form, and maybe that is like a deterrent. But like he changes back at like that when you come there. So it's like, well, do you need me to do that? Like, it's just kind of like you're just waiting. Like, you're just and I actually thought that this was even more egregious than in Breath of the Wild, because in Breath of the Wild you have the calamity swirling around the castle and it looks ethereal almost. Like, it's not quite a sentient being, but it kind of is. So like that one, I was just like, okay, like this thing is obviously connected to this castle. And by the way, the Hyrule Castle is like the ultimate goal, so it makes sense that he's just kind of in Hyrule Castle waiting, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Ganondorf is just, he's hanging out in the depths, and it's like, well, what you doing? I don't know. It seems kind of weird to me.
There's an explanation in Breath of the Wild that's really easy. Zelda's stealing him until she can't anymore, is right when Link shows up. So that's why he's not doing nothing, you know? But in Tears, you're right. Like, he just, especially when you play 245 hours and then you get down there. And, like, listen, this is actually, like, one of my most favorite, like, sequences of the game. One of my favorite, like, endings to a Zelda game ever. So don't get me wrong. I'm just being slightly critical of the fact that, yeah, he just chilling down there, sending up his little gloom hands to kind of mess with things.
Yeah.
And, like, basically poison Hyrule. But, like, what is he waiting for? You know? Why is he just...
He's got this ginormous army. He's the Demon King. Like,
he's been sealed for 10,000 years, and he doesn't want to just get above ground and start wreaking havoc with, like...
Yeah.
It feels like he is wreaking havoc, but it's very passive. Which doesn't feel like Ganondorf at all. Is he recharging? There's no explanation that he's like recharging down there. Which I imagine that's my explanation, is he's down there kind of getting back his energy.
Yeah.
But like nobody says anything about that.
Like you look at Ocarina of Time, he's a very active participant in the story. He obviously snags Link out when he's about to go into the Temple of Time, and then he wins. He conquers Hyrule Castle, and he's at Hyrule Castle. That makes sense. You look at Wind Waker. He's very active. Again, he's controlling this bird. He goes down into the sunken Hyrule Castle, and once again, he is exactly where he wants to be. Same with Twilight Princess. He is where he needs to be in order to, like, you know, rule Hyrule. And yeah, it's just kind of like, what you doing? What you doing down there?
Down here.
But again, if you're not telling a structured story and you're just being like, anybody can do anything whenever they want, however they want, what else are you supposed to do other than just have him sitting down there singing Kumbaya, waiting for you to come and kick his ass with the Master Sword?
If you dive straight down there with, you know, from the Sky Island, then it makes sense that he's still kind of sitting down there. But like I said, if you did the whole storyline, found all 900 Koroks, you're like, what have you been doing down here, guy? I'm up there doing all the work.
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I almost forgot about you down here. You've been pretty peaceful, keeping to yourself. Thank you for that. Although, I will say, to counter that, when you finally do go down, this scene was so awesome. This was so awesome. Going down there, and you're fighting the hordes of enemies and the Demon King's army and stuff like that. And you know that scene in Avengers Endgame where it looks like things are going really wrong. It looks like Thanos is about to overrun everybody, and you see like Steve Rogers. He's all beaten up. He's got like the Raru dirt on his face actually, and he's just like, ugh. And then you hear just like on your left, and then all the frickin' Avengers come in, and he's like, Avengers. That was comparable to me to this scene where like Link is getting his butt kicked, and then like all the champions come in, and like the moment where you see all like the bosses again, like all of them, and you're just like, oh my god, I gotta fight like every one of these guys, and then the champions come in, it's just like, yeah, this is awesome. That moment was so good. God, it was awesome.
I'm gonna back it up just a tiny bit, because this is why this ending sequence is probably one of my favorite Zelda ending sequences. Is you go down to the castle, because obviously Ganondorf is underneath the castle, even though you need for some reason Koga to tell you that. But you go down there and you're like fighting like monsters to get down there, and slowly the music, like the gloom is getting more intense, the music's getting more intense, but also you're retracing your steps from the very beginning, that intense, amazing opening that we talked about. You get to that mural room, you can blow up the rocks now and see that Zelda's a freaking dragon in the mural that you missed it at the beginning. This is when we're starting to see that Ouroboros in the title screen take where it's coming full circle. Not only like are the two dragons fighting each other, and we're going to see that here in a bit, but we're starting to see the full circle of the story. And I thought that was this is the strongest story point of the whole game was when you're starting to see the circle come together, and I was just like, this is so cool. We're coming back down here to almost the same exact spot to fight him. In fact, when you fall down into like one of those holes, you see the torch that Zelda dropped, where she would have been gone splat dead if she didn't go into the past, you know?
Right.
So it's so cool. And like that on top of the buildup of the music and the enemies to get down there and to get to that point where you're fighting the horde, your pals show up to help you is just so good. I was like, where was all of this throughout the entire middle of the game? All that story, like where was all this really strong storytelling at?
You know why? Because when you get to the end, it's like you can go slowly from point A to point B, and it makes sense. Like if you could go down there, and it's just like you could choose to have the big confrontation with the bosses, or you could just go right to Ganondorf. It's like it doesn't hit the same, but because it's like a structured ending to the game, it's awesome. And you're right. I love the room where you can finally see the mural. And God, if it would have been like Days of Future Past style, where it's like, wow, this is the prophecy. Like I am, Zelda was the one who set it all up. Like that. God damn, that would have been awesome. That would have been so wicked. But it was very cool nonetheless. Like I love that scene where like the champions come in and they're just like, we got you. Go fight Ganondorf. It's so awesome. So awesome. Yep. And like, and I feel like we've been kind of beating up on the story of this game, and justifiably so. But you can never say that this game doesn't have like awesome moments, because it does. It has like a ton of incredible, awesome moments. A lot of them that we talked about in the regional phenomenon, a lot that happened here, like the fake Zelda turning into Phantom Ganondorf. Like, as moments, those are all awesome, but it would have been cool to see them tied together a little bit more.
Yes, I agree. I know, like you said, we were kind of beating up on the story a little bit, and it deserves it. But there's so many parts of the story that are really good, like story chunks of material.
Yeah.
And it's just like, if only it was like pieced together better. If only there was just a little bit more, like substance in between those big moments, it would have just made the story feel more complete, feel more satisfying, feel more fulfilling. Because clearly the beginning and the end of this game are like the strongest points of the game. I feel like there's chunks in the middle too that obviously Zelda becoming the dragon was monumental, at least to me. I still get goosebumps every time I watch it. And then like the coming to Hyrule Castle and having to fight Phantom Ganon, even though I feel like it's diminished, it's still such an epic moment. There's just a lot of cool stuff. It's just, I wish it just was done better, put together better.
Right. I want to talk about Zelda becoming a dragon in just a second, but first of all, I want to talk about the final battle. And we don't need to talk about the actual battle itself. We've done that on our bosses episode. I want to talk about the ending.
Yes.
Where Ganondorf he knows he's cooked. And he's like, you know what? If Zelda can do it, so can I. And he eats that. First of all, I knew he was going to eat that stone. The second I got down there, I was like, this guy. Once I beat him, he's going to turn into a dragon. I put it together.
Okay, I didn't know that far ahead. I knew like as soon as he was like pissed off enough, I was like, this is usually when Ganondorf loses his mind and goes full Ganon. But then he ripped off the tear, and I was like, oh my god, he's going to eat it. That's when I knew.
I was pretty sure before even going down there that this was going to happen, because so much of this game was a one-for-one structure-wise from what Breath of the Wild did. And I was like, okay, so if I'm going to fight Ganondorf, there's probably going to be a kind of like cinematic almost final battle where there's like no chance of dying, but like what's it going to be? And I was like, we got one dragon, maybe there's two. And when he like as soon as he was done, he was like, I was like, this guy, he's gonna do it. I was right, and I felt actually pretty proud of myself for that.
Nice,
and
good job.
And I think that final, like the moment where he turns into the dragon is awesome. This was so cool. Wicked, and the battle against Demon Dragon is awesome. And some people out there are just like, oh, it's so easy and like, there's no challenge. Yeah, it is easy, and no, you're not gonna die. But I think that if you went into it with the mindset like I did, where it's just like there's gonna be like a cinematic final battle at the ending where it's gonna be like Dark Beast Ganon, but this one was like 1,000 times better. Yes. It was awesome having like Dragon Zelda like come in and help you, and like God, this final sequence was so awesome. It was so wicked to have that like in the sky and just falling, and it kind of tied the theme of like the Sky Islands and like being up in the sky in as well, even though there's no islands involved. But it's like, okay, like this is a part of this game. Like I thought it was so great, this whole final sequence. I didn't care that it was easy. It was just like an incredible moment. It was like being in an active cutscene, actually, which made it a little bit better for me. So I thought that this was like incredible.
Yes. I 100% agree. As soon as he ripped that crystal off, I knew he was going to turn into a dragon. He was going to eat it. And it was like, it was also like as violent looking as it was with Zelda. So that just like, there was a teeny part of me that was a little worried, because when he first like started emerging from his like mortal, or I don't know, body, it started to look like the Malice and the dark and Calamity Ganon-ish, you know, the pig that you see in Breath of the Wild. And I was like, ooh, please don't look like a stupid pig dragon. Oh, God. I was a tiny bit worried. But then when you finally see him, you're like, oh, my God, this is so sick. And Link is, like, caught in his teeth and trying to get out. And you're like, what is happening? How am I about to fight this dragon? And, of course, Zelda comes tearing in. He helps you get out. And oh, my God, I was so excited, because I was like, I really want to do this final battle with Zelda again, like you do in Breath of the Wild, just a tiny bit, where she helps you get those spots to hit Dark Beast Ganon. I just wanted it to be more involved. And so anyway, I was like, I want Zelda to be here for this. So I wound up fusing one of her horns to my Master Sword, because I was like, this is how I'm going to get Zelda to be with me, you know? But then it turns out that she just like legit is helping you fight this dragon up in the air. She's catching you. She's dropping you. She's distracting him. It's insane. And like, yes, it's easy, but
that's not the point.
It's done in such a way that it's exciting and it's epic, and it's just like, it's again pulling the whole story kind of into a circle where the two dragons are now fighting each other. It looks like the title card. It's oh my God, it's so good. It's honestly one of my favorite. And like, it's almost in my mind like comparable to Ocarina of Time fighting Ganon, you know? That was a much more somber epic. This is like just high fantasy epicness, and God, it's so good. I love it so much.
It was awesome. And we didn't, like I said, we didn't spend too much time talking about the Dragon Tear storyline, but like, you know, structuring aside, I think that storyline is great. Like when
I agree.
The way that Zelda, what she does, like I think it's great. So this is where the problem comes in for me. Is that so you defeat Dragon Ganon, and he's dead. He's no more. The Demon King is finally done. And much like Age of Calamity, there are amazing moments in a bubble here. Like I think when Zelda reverts back and Link is falling, and this time he grabs her arm, that's a great moment. Like that's a top moment. However, I think for me, I felt a little bit shortchanged. I felt like it was really cheap to get to that moment, because like it kind of. And listen, I'm not suggesting that Zelda should have stayed a dragon forever or something, but like maybe they could have worked into the story like with draconification. Maybe they still have time to do this with the DLC, but maybe they could have been like, I don't know. You could reverse the process once the Demon King is completed. Something to justify her turning back, because it undoes this big sacrifice that she makes, and all you kind of get as an explanation is like Rauru and Sonya. They're just like, you are good, and we're gonna turn you back into a human, and by the way, we're gonna give you your arm back too.
Yeah,
and I don't know. It felt really cheap to me. It's just kind of like, oh, like okay, I guess we're really gonna get that happy ending. Like it felt like this big Deus Ex Machina at the end that kind of felt a little bit unearned and a little bit it just kind of, I don't know. Like did Rauru and Sonya always have that ability, and they were just waiting until after the Demon King was slain to turn Zelda back? I don't know. Like did Rauru and Zelda or Sonya even know like what's going on? Like these guys are dead. Like I don't know. So it felt a little bit cheap. I could have done with a little bit more explanation or justification to why it was done. So in that way, the hand clasping moment didn't hit as hard for me as I think it did for you.
Yeah. I would say it hit really hard. I was super emotional. Um, it's I understand where you're coming from, and I think a lot of people would agree with you because there is an emotional weight behind Zelda turning into a dragon for 10,000 plus years.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels like that emotional weight is like not validated because she's then turned back into you. Like that, if that was always the end result, then how do you how do you explain like the sacrifice that she made if there was always a chance that she could come back? Obviously she didn't know there was a chance. She knew that she was doing this forever.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that feeling. However, I think, and I've said this before, I think because the point of tears was to come in that full circle is what makes this okay for me. So I do though wish that they had more of an explanation on why Sonya and Raru's powers were able to bring Zelda back from the draconification, because everything up until that point told us that she couldn't be. How Link even got his arm back, I was disappointed. I wanted him to keep Raru's arm.
Yeah.
So there's some tidbits that I think they could have done better. But I'm okay with her turning back. And I love that she's once again falling into the void. Link is reaching for her just like at the beginning of the game. This time he's able to catch her.
Hmm.
And like what we were talking about last week, the fall music, I explained that incorrectly last week, by the way, but it still evolves as you're falling for trying to catch Zelda. So it still hits. I personally have also a childhood memory attached to with a very similar scene from my like a childhood cartoon that I used to watch. So that instantly came to mind and was something that always made me emotional. So it just connected with this moment, and I was just like, I was just crying, and I was like, I can't believe this. I'm like diving to save her. I got her. We fall into this pond of water together. She's back. She says, "Oh, Link, I'm home." It's to me
Mm-hmm.
what is such a good ending to a Zelda game, especially after the disappointment of Breath of the Wild. So like, it really hit all the feels for me.
I think I would have liked to see, to going back to my Days of Future Past scenario again. If Zelda could have somehow, even if it was like a cheap explanation where she's like, where her and Mineru, actually, maybe this could tie everything together, where her and Mineru, there's another dragon tier scene or something where they're working tirelessly, maybe for like a long time, working on a way to like counteract the draconification if the Demon King is defeated.
Mm-hmm.
So like Zelda takes this, she draconifies herself and is like, this might not work. It might work. I hope it does. And if it does, then like there's a chance that I could return. And if not, then I'm gonna be a dragon for forever. Like I think that even like a scene like that, I think I would have been really okay with, because like some
Yeah.
kind of explanation or justification, and that would have done something for Minoru too, and made that final scene with her, because that's like the last scene in the game basically. It was like when
Yeah.
Minoru goes away. So I think that could have been something really cool too. Or even if maybe even if Minoru was just like, I've been hanging on to this life of mine, like half alive, half dead for like who knows how long. Like I'm giving all of my life essence to, even that's kind of cheap actually, but like I don't know. I feel like we've seen scenarios like this before in like Skyward Sword, but like I feel like at Skyward Sword it was very clear, like defeat the Demon King and like Zelda's gonna turn back to normal, you
Right.
know. So
Yeah. I
and
mean, and
I
I
don't
get,
know.
like I said, I get where you're coming from. I think people feel the same, but I feel like the sacrifice that Zelda made still holds because she didn't know. She didn't have a hope that she was coming back. She made all these plans. She knew what she needed to do to get the Master Sword to repair itself. She knew what she needed to do to have like infinite life to get it to Link in the future. And so she still made that sacrifice. She still made the plans. So I feel like even though it wasn't her choice to come back, they just brought her back maybe like as a reward for her sacrifice.
Right.
It doesn't diminish what she did, in my eyes at least. But I do understand how people feel that way.
Yeah, and like I said, like I think the ending is really great. Like it's
Hmm.
just it was a little bit sour for me, and I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade, but I was just kind of like, oh, I'm like, all right. But I think the moment where like they clasp their hands, like, God, that was a
Hmm.
great moment. Like
Hmm.
that was a great payoff and coming full circle moment. And I think that no matter what you want to say about the story and the ending, like that's still in a bubble. That moment is a top Zelda moment, I think.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, I think that You know, I think that the story of Tears of the Kingdom is good. There's a lot of great moments and micro great moments. Like I think the Gerudo Town story is incredible. I love the Yunobo Court story. Like I love that. The Tulin story was great. I think that the Master Koga story is awesome. I like there's all these smaller stories in the game, like and side quests too, like all the, like side adventures and stuff. Like all of these are like so fantastic, but I really think that like it just they didn't get it right with the main story, and I think almost every single problem with the main story is because of the structure of the game. I really do, because like the end is awesome, the beginning's awesome. It could have been a little bit more, fleshed out, but it's still pretty cool. But then like you get the Dragon Tears out of order. You get the same story 5 times. You get quests, like important quests that you just basically skip over if you don't do it when you're supposed to. It's just like there is a cool story to be told here, but it's like Nintendo just doesn't want to let you experience it, because they're more concerned with like you being able to do whatever, whenever, however, than they are with like telling a good narrative. And you know what? There's probably some people that love that. But I don't actually. I
it's
don't.
Not me.
Yeah. So
I feel like I just finished Survivor a few weeks ago, and like Survivor was a little bit more open world than Fallen Order.
I thought you were talking like the show Survivor, like vote people.
Oh no, sorry, Jedi Survivor, sorry. And it's a little bit more open world where you can kind of go off in different directions, but there's still a structure to the story, so I think it's possible you can do it. We talk about Horizon, and so I have a proposal though, because talking about this makes me wonder, like, if we had experienced it the way it was supposed to be, if we would have different feelings. So, like, let's say a year from now, we, like, replay this game as it's supposed to be played, in its exact story order, and see if we have any kind of changed feelings. I mean, I feel like our feelings are pretty much, like, the story's great and good in some parts and exceptional in other parts, but the structure just kind of kills it. So, do you think we'll feel differently if we played it as it should be experienced?
Well, I mean, so you still have the problems at the beginning of the game, like, why did Zelda go back in time?
Right.
Why, like, so those problems are there.
With Breath of the Wild too, so it's fine.
Well, I think that we shouldn't measure against Breath of the Wild as the gold standard of storytelling, to be fair.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot we could pick apart about that. So I think that the issues at the beginning of the game, they're still there, but those are, you can live with those, right? Like you can put up with that. What I think is worse is the fake Zelda storyline, because it runs throughout every single regional phenomena story. So like that's tough. That's tough to get rid of, and you can't get rid of it. I think in Mineru you could probably, if you did the quest as intended, that would probably be okay.
Yeah,
it'd probably be okay. And I mean the ending is what it is. It's like now where they could come in and help with people like me who maybe feel a little bit shortchanged by the ending. There could be some DLC that maybe expands or offers and frankly, that could help the beginning of the game as well. So there could be some DLC that comes in and does that. My theory for DLC is we're going to learn a lot more about dragons, including the 3 that have been flying around. But so it's possible. I mean, like there's certainly some flaws. And I think if it was just the flaws at the beginning and the end, like I can live with that. But I think like the fake Zelda stuff really, it really does kind of, like, I don't want to say, like, it holds back the regional phenomena parts. Not that those parts aren't awesome, because they are. Like, well, except for Sidon's, his kind of stinks, but like, those stories are really great, but it's like, it's you just finished this amazing lightning temple, and it's like you're feeling great, you're feeling pumped, and you're just like, oh god, here we go again, the same freaking cutscene again. Instead of like I would have changed it to like, and again, I'm no game developer, but I feel like this couldn't have been that hard considering what you can do mechanically in this game. But like, there's one cutscene when you do the first dungeon. It doesn't matter which one, but like when you beat your first dungeon, you get this one cutscene. It shows you a little bit about the imprisoning war, a little bit about fake Zelda. When you beat the second dungeon, whatever dungeon you choose, there's another cutscene, and again until the fourth one. And then by the time and when you get to Mineru, and you can't do Mineru until you've done the other 4 is also what I would have done. When you get to Mineru, then you get the whole thing about the imprisoning war. Then you find out about what Rauru did. Then you find out, and like those fixes will never happen because it's not possible. So I think like, you know.
Hey, I mean, anything's possible when you have, HD versions coming out. Someday we're going to get the 4K Ultra of Tears of the Kingdom, and they're going to be like, sorry, we busted. We fixed it.
That's coming out in 4 years, man. If they keep on up with, like, the 10-year HD re-release, we're going to be playing Breath of the Wild 4K in, like, March 2027. That is unreal.
Yeah. Yep. True story.
So, yeah. Any final thoughts about the story before we get out of here, Al? I feel like we've said a lot. I feel like we had some valid points. I hope that people listening to this don't think that we're just beating up on the story, even though we kind of are.
We are. We're being critical, and like I think that's fair because this is a series that we love, and sometimes it's like you don't want to just like, take everything that's given to you, and like obviously I'm super grateful that this game came out, and I loved my experience with it.
Right.
But sometimes when there's stuff that you don't really care for, you gotta, admit it and say like, hey, maybe this could be better in the future.
Well, and that's exactly it. Like, that's how you improve as well. And I'm not saying Nintendo's listening to the Zelda Cast being like, these guys are right. By God, we need to change it up for Breath of the Wild 3. But,
yeah.
I think there's enough people who share our sentiments where it's just like, okay, like maybe just bring it back a little bit. A little bit. Like, you can have some structure. You can have some moments that can only be activated by doing this and this and this. Like, the story of side quests and side adventures are awesome because you have to do them in order. And, like, the story of the regional phenomenon, once you get there, is great because, you have to follow it from start to finish, where the overall structure of this game, you don't have to do that. You can do Dragon Tears, whatever order you want. You don't even have to do them. You can do regional phenomena, whatever order you want. You don't even have to do them. You can, even if you didn't want to, you never have to experience fake Zelda. You can just go right to Ganondorf, and I think that shortchanges what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So, the exact same things could have been said about Breath of the Wild, but it's funny actually because I hated the story of I didn't hate the story, but like the story wasn't great in Breath of the Wild, but there was all these great individual character moments, which actually almost fits this format of storytelling better because it's like you just see these moments in time, these snapshots of characters, and while it tells a horrible like narrative, like from start to finish, it's like it almost makes more sense because it's like it doesn't actively detract from telling a narrative, and then like you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not done in it like clearly there are some bits that are in order in Breath of the Wild, but like you already kind of know what's going on to reach the result of like Calamity Ganon. I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but I don't know. It's just like there wasn't that much to work with, and it was like fine that it was out of order. Whereas you've got something where you're like, what the heck is Zelda doing in the past? And then it's all out of order, and then you have one cutscene that says, oh, don't swallow a secret stone, you'll draconify. And then you're like, okay, well now I can guess what Zelda's about to do, so...
Don't push the big red button. Whatever you do.
So, anyways, like, just to bring it all back, I do actually really love Tears of the Kingdom. I think it's a fantastic game. I think there's just some stuff that it's done wrong and that I would have made completely different decisions. I do think it's, like, probably one of my more top Zelda games. I know you said that not for you, but I guess... I'm hopeful that this is the end of this era of Zelda, and I'm looking forward to the next era of Zelda where maybe Nintendo will take some of these criticism from the fans and, like, improve the way we want them to.
You know what? I think that I'm not holding my breath for that, to be honest. I mean, you look at Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think that those two games have sold more than every other game combined in the series. So, like, do I think that we're going to get more in this style? Yes. Do I think it's probably going to have the same...
Is fine.
Well, I think that they're going to do the same thing, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think they're okay with open world, but you could still structure it. You could still take it a step back.
Well, I don't think they're going to do that. If I'm being honest, I think that they're going to just say, like, okay, this clearly works. People like the freedom. and maybe they do. Maybe it's just us that don't like it. But
I guess so.
I think that this format is unfortunately here to stay. Although, you did see improvements from Tears of the Kingdom to Breath of the Wild, so maybe we could see some more improvements from Tears of the Kingdom to, I don't know, Age of Upheaval.
Age of Oh God,
that's kind of hard to say, isn't it? Yeah.
Age of Upheaval.
I struggled a little bit a few times saying Age of Upheaval. It doesn't flow like Age of Calamity does. Anyways. Yep. Okay, well, there we go. That's our full spoiler cast. We've been building up and building up and building up, and I think we delivered maybe our strongest Tears of the Kingdom episode yet in the several months since it's come out. So we were on our A game today. Good job, Al.
Ooh, we did it.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it for us, my friends. We are going to get out of here. You can check us out over on Twitter at the Zelda Cast, at Spiteri316, at Allison Aletha, and wherever you get your podcast. Like, subscribe. Let us know what you think about our suggestions, our critiques, our input on the story of Tears of the Kingdom. You can do so over on Zelda Dungeons Discord. Come and join. We're very active over on there, so we'd love to have a talk about everything that we laid out. Love to know your opinions. So yeah, come and do that. And again, if you want to leave us a sweet 5-star review, that would be fantastic. We love to see those. And I think that's all the plug-in that we got to do. So with that being said, everybody, have a great long weekend, and we will see you back here next week. Take care.
Bye.
Hey everyone! If you enjoyed this clip and want to see more of the Zelda Cast, make sure to head over to your favorite podcast platform of choice and subscribe. There are over 200 episodes in the vault that will provide you with hundreds of hours of Zelda content for you to enjoy. You can listen to us when you're on a walk, fighting Ganon, trying to sleep, whatever. And if you want to see these shows as they happen, make sure to head over to twitch.tv/the Zelda Cast, where you can watch our beautiful faces talk about Zelda every single week. Don't miss out, and we'll see you next time.